It's that time of year again, where everyone looks back and reflects on the games that they played throughout the year. I didn't have as much free time as I hoped I would have this year, being a full-time student and having a job and life and all. I know, shocking for someone who still willingly plays League of Legends, so I didn't get to play a whole lot of games this year, but the ones that I did play were all well worth my time. In terms of AAA games, we got Silly Robot Game, Dragon Ball Souls-like, Persona 6 before GTA 6, Overwatch if it didn't suck, an actual good Sonic game, and more Yakuza, even though I don't know how they keep pumping out such quality Yakuza games, but I'm really excited to play the upcoming one where you have to find the One Piece. Then we have the indie games. Oh my god, the indie games. Emberward is a really cool tower defense roguelike deck builder with puzzle aspects. There's the Big Catch demo that was basically just a whole ass game, mouthwash drinking simulator, Phantasy Star Online but with furries, Balatro proved that my gambling addiction is not an addiction but a skill issue, Fields of Mystria for some reason asked the question, what if Stardew Valley but Sailor Moon, and the answer is, it fucking rocks and everyone is hot. Shogun Showdown had me pulling off some crazy combos and pulling out my hair, and there's a couple more games, but I'm not here right now to talk about all the games I played this year, which as of writing this is way more than I thought. Jesus, maybe I really don't have a life. Anyway, if you read the title of this video, there was one game that I played this year that I absolutely loved to bits, but heard like no one talk about. This may be my game of the year and one of the most overlooked indie games of 2024, and that game is Beastieball. Monster catching / taming RPGs are one of my favorite genre of games, and unfortunately for a lot of people when they hear that phrase, their immediate thought is, oh, like Pokemon. A lot of people's only experience with this genre of games is Pokemon due to its sheer popularity, and it certainly is one of the most influential series in the genre. However, Pokemon was not the first monster tamer game, and nor does it represent the genre as a whole. Sure, many games in the genre take elements from Pokemon, but those games also put their own unique spin on it, and many monster tamer games, like Shin Megami Tensei for example, are very different from the Pokemon formula. Sure, there are Pokemon clones, but it's sad to see every monster tamer to be labeled as one, because that's just simply not the truth. Anyway, I don't want to spend any more time talking about Pokemon in this video. I just wanted to quickly air my grievances, since the game this video is about is a monster tamer RPG. With all that intro out of the way, Beastieball is an indie monster taming RPG, where you recruit monsters not to fight each other, but to play volleyball. In this world, there are creatures called beasties, and for some reason, which is kind of explained later, but I'm not gonna say because it's kind of spoilers, the thing they love most is to play volleyball. Humans and beasties lived together peacefully, and eventually humans started forming teams of beasties to coach and play against other teams. And then capitalism happened, and it became a big league with sponsors and questionable ethics. Anyway, the premise of the game is that we grew up in the little town of Rutile, spending a lot of our childhood on the Rutile Wildlife Preserve, dreaming of the Beastieball big leagues. Flash forward to today, where the league is trying to construct a brand new stadium right on the preserve, because it's good for the economy, and of course preserving the economy is far more important. The league won't listen to anyone in Rutile because there are no high-ranking coaches there anymore, so in order to get your voice heard and put a stop to the construction, you set out to become the highest-ranking coach. Let's get into the meat of the game, the combat. Except I wouldn't quite classify battles in this game as combat, as you're not directly fighting someone until they faint or die. It's a turn-based sports match. Matches are always 2v2 and on this sort of grid. There are two sides separated by a net, just like with regular volleyball, and on each side there are two lanes, each with a front row and a back row. At the serve or start of a match, every beastie starts in the back row of each lane. The goal is to score a certain number of points depending on what type of match it is. First to score X amount of points wins. When you have the ball, aka your main phase, you have 3 action points that you can spend. You can use these points to make a beastie move, use a play from their playbook, or volley the ball. There are 3 types of plays: attack plays, support plays, and defensive plays. Attack plays are your bread and butter and what you use to beam the ball to the other side. Attack plays typically target a lane of your choice. If there is a beastie in that lane, then that beastie will receive the ball, but that impact is going to decrease the receiving beastie's stamina. Each beastie has 100 stamina points, and it's similar to hit points. If an attack play would reduce a beastie to 0 stamina, then the receiver would get wiped and drop the ball, scoring you a point. Basically, a beastie needs enough stamina to receive a hit, and repeatedly receiving balls is gonna wear out its stamina. There is another way to score points. If, let's say, your opponent's beasties are in one lane, which can happen because of a reason I'll get into, and you hit the ball into the empty lane, you score a touchless point because no one is there to receive it. Touchless points are the key to winning tougher matches where your attack plays might not do so much damage as your opponents might be higher level or have higher defense. Now, there are some attack plays that target rows instead of lanes. So say both your opponent's beasties are in the back row. The front row is open for you to score a touchless point if you have a play that targets rows. Positioning is very, very important in matches. Beasties in the back row receive less damage from attacks, but beasties in the front row deal more damage. So it's kind of a risk versus reward system. And another thing is that if you put one beastie in front of another, meaning they're both in the same lane, then the one in front gets greatly boosted defense. When your opponent is about to send the ball your way, you have your defense phase. In this phase, you get one action. You can spend it to tag a beastie out with a benched one, use a defensive play, or move a beastie. So maybe you left a lane wide open. You could use this action to move a beastie to the other lane to keep it covered. Matches are this dance of moving around your beasties for optimal positioning to deal max damage to your opponent and receive as little as possible while making sure you're not leaving yourself open. Every beastie has 6 stats, 3 offense stats and 3 defense stats. There's spiritual attack and defense, body attack and defense, and mind attack and defense. There are 3 types of attack plays: spirit, body, and mind. Basically, the attack stats determine how strong your related attacks are, so a high spirit attack stat will mean that that beastie's spirit attack plays will be stronger. Defense stats determine how weak or strong a beastie is against that type of attack. So a spirit attack against a beastie with high spirit defense isn't gonna do a lot. When you're about to launch the ball at a beastie, it tells you how much damage it's gonna do, which is pretty handy. You can also just look at your opponent's beastie's stats and plays, so there isn't really much guessing in matches. You and your opponent are both aware of what you're both capable of, so winning more comes down to understanding your opponent better and playing around them. Kind of like real sports, I think. Another thing about combat in air quotes, when a beastie receives a ball, it can't just immediately serve it right back. First, the ball has to be volleyed. This is to ensure that matches aren't just constantly sending the ball back and forth. Now this is a good time to get into the other types of plays in this game. Support plays are moves that can be used by a beastie who is not currently holding the ball. These moves can do various things such as restoring stamina to a beastie, boosting a stat, or giving a beastie a condition. Then there are volley plays. This is just like a regular volley, except something else happens, like your beastie moves to the front row after the volley. Then there are defensive plays, which can only be used when receiving. These typically boost defense or reduce the amount of stamina that would be lost when receiving the ball. But they can also be used to reduce the amount of power that the attack would have. Like with the play Block, which every beastie knows. Block, however, can only be used by beasties in the front row, aka at the net, and they can only block one beastie. You choose your defense play while your opponent chooses their plays, and then their plays and your play resolve simultaneously in order. So you don't know for sure what your opponent is gonna do or which beastie is gonna attack. So when you block, you have to choose which beastie you think is gonna attack, and then their attack will do less damage. Like I said before, matches are really about understanding your opponent and playing around them. You have to analyze them and anticipate what they're going to do. Victory goes to whoever out-anticipates the other and plays better. Something to note is that you can undo actions in your main phase unless you've attacked. So say you used a support play and then volleyed the ball. You can undo both those actions. However, I honestly forgot that this was a thing for most of my playthrough, and I don't think that this is too forgiving as you can't undo attack plays. And also, if you think it is too forgiving, then like, just don't fucking use it, man. That covers the general basics of combat. I'm not really going to cover conditions because there's a fair amount to go over there and it's not super important. But as you can see, combat is very deep and engaging. It's not just mindlessly spam move that the opponent is weak to. There's a lot of thought that goes into how you spend your actions and how you position your beasties, and it's all very rewarding. Every match against a ranked coach was challenging and I was really pushing myself to outplay my opponent, looking at their beasties' stats and plays and trying to anticipate what they'll do. There's a lot of thought that goes into your team lineup and your beasties' playbooks. Each beastie can have 3 plays outside of block, volley, and move, and they learn more plays as they level up. Now, some plays might be better than others in terms of attack power, but really most of your beastie's plays are equally as useful if you string them together right. Like, look at this beastie here, Trat. It knows Reposition, which is a support play that swaps positions with the other beastie, Shield, which is a defensive play that greatly reduces the damage it would take, and the support play Dispel, which makes an ally's ball become volleyed, meaning if it just received it, it can now serve it. Notice how I don't have any attack plays equipped. I could, but I chose not to, because I like to pair this beastie with another. With the other beastie, Hopra, I have it set to have Drum, which is a support play that gives my team a little healing and protection, Super Commit, which is a spirit attack play that is very strong and this beastie already has a high spirit attack stat. And for its last play, I have Mighty Yell, which is a defensive play that draws aggro and makes attacks go to them. These 2 beasties are fine on their own, as long as I put them in the right scenarios. The first is a supporter that can allow the attacker to hit the ball right back and easily move them by swapping positions with them. Then the other is a tank that draws attacks and hits hard. But together, these 2 are absolute menaces, as the support allows the tank to just spam attack and the tank takes all the aggro. It's really satisfying to build a team that just works well together. You can even further customize your beasties at gyms, which allow you to alter your beastie's stats. You can increase and decrease their stats, but there is a limit, of course, to the amount that you can increase. Think of it kind of like creating a character in D&D using the point buy system. So with my tank, I took points out of its body and mind attack and put it in defense. Then there's a whole nother level of customizing your team when it comes to traits. Each beastie has a trait, a unique passive effect. Like my Platena has the trait Neural Net, which makes it a magnet for mind attacks. What I did is that whenever I go up against a team with a lot of mind attacks, I'd swap in Platena. I equipped the Mind Read defense play on Platena, which greatly boosted its mind defense stat, and it was already pretty high as is. So all attacks would just go to Platena because of its trait, and they would do very little damage. Would you believe me if I told you there's still another layer when it comes to building your team? Because your beasties can develop relationships. When your beasties play together, they grow close and they can become partners or rivals, besties, or sweethearts. Each beastie has a personality type, and so each beastie is going to get along differently, and this affects what relationship they develop. When your beasties develop a relationship, they gain a unique combo move that they can use, and they can teach each other moves. They'll want to be more like each other, learn from each other, or do better than the other. They can take moves from each other's playbooks, and it doesn't have to be an equipped move. So you might have a beastie that has a move that you don't really use, but another beastie you have is capable of learning that move and it would fit really good on that beastie. Then, by having them play together, they can develop a relationship, and your beastie can learn that move from the other. The relationship and personality system in this game is really dynamic. Before league matches, you'll have time to prep in the locker room, and you can talk to your beasties and see how they're doing. One might be nervous and another might be encouraging it. It's very cute to see their interactions. I had an Alugus and a Hopra that got to be rivals, and one game I left myself open and got a point scored against me. My Alugus got mad at Hopra for losing them a point, and then later in another game, Alugus was still mad and sabotaged Hopra's attack, causing it to do less damage. Then later in that same game, Hopra distracted Alugus when they were receiving an attack, causing it to do more damage. Then they both had the stressed out condition whenever they played together. Eventually, however, they cooled off, and in the wake of their feud, their feelings for one another shifted and they became partners. It's really cool to see the beasties that I coach grow together, to see that they're more than just creatures I command, but a team that works together and spends time with one another. The beasties that aren't on your active team are in reserve, and they will usually hang out around the area that you recruited them. However, they do move around. They go and visit other beasties and see how they're doing, which is really cute. And beasties do grow apart from each other when they haven't played with each other for a while. Their relationships will fade and they'll develop new ones. And beasties' personalities change as they grow up or metamorph. All this being said, your beasties really matter to you and to each other. Alright, at this point I bet you've been wondering for the past 10 minutes, how the hell do you recruit wild beasties? How to do it is that you need to first research a beastie, and you do this via playing against them. After like 2 or 3 matches, you'll have completed the research on the beastie, and that reveals the beastie's recruitment condition. In order to recruit a beastie, you have to 1. Have a jersey in your inventory, and 2. Meet that recruitment condition in a match. If you met the condition and have a jersey, once the match is over, the beastie will ask to join your team. Recruitment conditions can range from being like use 2 spirit attacks against this beastie or boost a beastie's defense 3 times. This game kind of takes a different approach to recruiting monsters than other monster tamer games might do, but I thought it was cool. Now, believe it or not, there is more to this game than just playing volleyball. There's a pretty decently sized world to explore, and it's somewhat open world. There are higher level areas that you could, but really shouldn't go to early in the game. On your adventures as you battle ranked coaches, you'll gain more friends. You have a social battery that you can use to call up people to hang out with and deepen your relationships with them. You can recharge your social battery over time by playing matches. You can also spend your battery charges to call up friends for favors. Typically these favors are moves that they can teach to your beasties, so there is actual incentive to being social. I'd say it's well worth your time to interact with people, as the dialogue in this game is at times quite humorous, but also quite charming. There was this one person who I talked to who was struggling with coming to terms with their beastie metamorphing, as she liked when they were smaller and cuter. She felt bad because that beastie was her best friend and still remained friends with her after she transitioned, and she wants to be a good friend and supportive of her beastie like her beastie was to her. And I was like, wow, goddamn, this is a serious topic, but it was a nice moment. There are serious and earnest moments like this all throughout the game, and I never felt like they were out of place. Also, I really shouldn't have to say this, but fuck, the art in this game hits. All the monster designs are just so well done, and you can look at every beastie's concept art and development history, which I just think is so cool. I love to see how these designs started and changed over time. Also, Axolotl is best boy, you can't argue with me, it's just facts. Now I'm gonna be honest, I haven't beaten this game yet. I'm about 70% of the way through, having beaten most of the ranked coaches and will soon enter the big tournament. However, I could not wait to make a video on this game because it's that good. Now this game is in early access, but it does feel like a full-ass game. I think it's well worth buying now. This game fucking rocks, and it hasn't gotten anywhere close to the amount of attention that it deserves. I never thought that I'd get a new contender for favorite monster tamer game that comes close to Cassette Beasts, but this might just. This might be my game of the year, hands down, and I fucking loved Astrobot. I mean, I'm a big 3D platformers guy too, but this game is such a refreshing take on its genre, and it's so well executed. Indie devs deserve all the support they can get. The fact that such small teams of people can make shit like this is nothing short of incredible.